You think he'll come for you? Marcus's voice slid like a knife through the dark. He doesn't save people, Alara. He uses them. That night, tied to a chair in an abandoned warehouse, Alara Quinn realized how easily trust could turn into a weapon. But somewhere in that same darkness, a man she once warned not to drink was already on his way back, risking everything for the woman who had undone him. Before we dive in, let me know, what time are you listening to this and where are you? Drop a comment below, we'd love to hear from you. Alara woke before the alarm. The radiator had quit again. She filled the kettle, waited for it to hiss, and poured herself the first comfort of the day. Bills waited by the door, thin envelopes stamped in red. She stacked them face down on the counter. Rosanos glowed against the dull block glass, polished music low. Servers moved briskly, every motion practiced. Alara clocked in, tied her apron, and took her station. Darius Holt passed with his tablet, voice clipped. "You'll take the side section tonight, Quinn. Full tables." She nodded. Riley Summers stirred her coffee beside the counter. "No one remembers our names till we mess up," she said. Alara laughed softly. "You work too much," Riley added. "Where were you before this place?" Out west, Alara answered, vague enough to end it. After closing, she wiped the last glass city lights smudged beyond the drizzle. Near the clock-out sheet, a note in neat handwriting. Private room 5. Dinner service. The dinner rush had faded, leaving only the low clatter of dishes and the steady hum of the dishwasher. Alara stacked glasses on the rack, her arms sore from hours of repetition. She reached for a bottle of Bordeaux from the storage room, thinking only of finishing the shift before her feet gave out. Darius's voice stopped her at the door. He was speaking quietly, the tone sharp and nervous in a way she'd never heard. The man in private room 5. He said the words careful, each one dragged out. "They want it done tonight. Make sure he drinks every drop." A pause. Then the clink of glass against glass and a slow pour. She leaned closer. Through the half-open door, she saw his hand holding a small vial, tipping a few drops of something colorless into a decanter of red wine. The swirl deepened for a moment before evening out again. Darius slipped the vial into his pocket and whispered into his phone, back turned to her. The calmness in his movements made it worse. Alara stepped back, nearly bumping into a cart. Her pulse beat hard in her throat. Logic said to walk away, pretend she hadn't seen anything. But the thought of anyone drinking from that bottle tightened something inside her. She returned to the counter. The host, busy checking a list, barely noticed her. "I'll take the tray for room 5, Alara said, voice steady, though her hands weren't. The host nodded, relieved to hand it off. The music from the main hall barely reached here, just a faint hum behind the closed door. A single man sat at the table, posture composed, eyes lowered toward the half-filled glass of water before him. He looked up when she entered. Kyle Moriyama, though she didn't know the name yet. Not handsome in the way magazines would say, but striking in a colder way. Something about him seemed deliberate, measured, as though he weighed everything he saw. Alara set the tray down. Her fingers brushed the napkin she'd folded twice, her handwriting, small and uneven, in the corner. "Don't drink." She slipped the note under the base of the wine glass, straightened the bottle, and stepped back. The urge to run pressed hard against her ribs, but she managed a faint, practiced smile. Kale's eyes lifted to her again, not suspicious, not friendly either, just watchful. The kind of look that stripped away pretense. Her breath caught. She turned before he could say a word. At the counter, Darius hovered over receipts, his tie-loosened eyes darting to the entrance every few seconds. "Where's Bordeaux?" he asked. "Delivered," she said, keeping her voice even. He studied her for a beat too long, then nodded. "Good." Moments later, he slipped into his office phone, already against his ear. The rest of the evening blurred. 2 men in black suits appeared near closing, exchanging brief words with the maitre d'. Their presence rippled through the staff. Riley leaned close to Alara while wiping down the counter. "What's going on? Those guys look like federal agents or something." Alara shook her head. No idea. Her voice was smaller than usual. By the time the last customers left, Darius was nowhere to be found. Someone said he'd left early, though no one had seen him go. Alara changed in the locker room, folded her apron into her bag, and checked the clock. Nearly midnight. She left through the back, pulling up her hood as rain began to fall again. The alley behind Rossano's shimmered with puddles. Water ran off the fire escape in a slow rhythm that matched her steps. She turned toward the street when headlights blinked once. A black car idled by the dumpsters, steady and quiet. The man from the private room sat there, face still, gaze fixed. No gesture, no word, just the same calm that had filled the room. Alara stopped. For a breath, she thought he might speak, but he only watched her gray eyes, level, unreadable. Not a threat, not thanks. Something else. The new manager introduced himself at roll call, short, nervous, eager to sound in control. Darius Holt has taken an unexpected leave, he said. No one asked why. Whispers filled the room. Bet he got caught in something shady, someone muttered. Riley smirked beside Alara. Told you that guy was trouble. Alara shrugged eyes on the menu's mind, still circling back to the man in the car. Under the new manager, work dragged on. Orders tangled, tempers thinned. Riley tried to keep spirits up with bad jokes, though she glanced toward the windows more than usual. Someone said the police had visited the owner that morning. Alara kept quiet, polishing silverware until the talk faded. She told herself it was a coincidence, but the thought stuck. Her hands slowed, her chest tightened. By closing, her throat was dry. She clocked out, grabbed her coat, and stepped into the narrow back lane. Rain came thin and steady. The car waited at the alley's mouth. Its headlights flicked once, dimming again. A man stepped out, tall, dark clothes, movements precise. Miss Quinn. His tone is polite, the hint of an accent. She froze, hand tightening on her bag. He held out a card. Mr. Moriyama would like to speak with you. She didn't take it at first. Who? The man you warned, he replied, eyes steady. It won't take long. A pause stretched between them. Then she nodded once and took the card. He stepped back, gesturing toward the street. Tomorrow, 8 p.m., Café Lyra. Ask for Luca. By the time she looked up again, he was gone. The car pulled away without sound. That night, she barely slept. Thoughts shifted between fear and curiosity until they blurred together. In the end, curiosity won. Café Lyra was small, old-fashioned, the kind of place students wrote papers in. She arrived early, found a table near the back, and waited. When Kyle Moriyama walked in, no one turned to look. He wasn't the kind of man who needed attention to be noticed. He sat opposite her without a word, removed his gloves, and folded them beside his cup. The server poured coffee left quietly. Kyle's voice came low. You wrote that note. Alara met his eyes, uncertain what he expected her to say. Yes. Why? The question was simple but carried something under it. She thought for a moment. Because it was wrong, she said, and I didn't want to be part of it. His gaze didn't waver. For a moment, she wondered if he was angry, but he only leaned back, studying her. You realize what that could have cost you? Maybe, she said, but someone had to stop it. Silence followed the world, continuing without them. Cale stirred his coffee, once slow, deliberate. You're either very brave, he said finally, or you don't know how dangerous people can be. I've learned enough, she murmured. Something flickered in his eyes, then amusement or respect, she couldn't tell. He placed money on the table, rose without finishing his drink. Stay out of Rossano's for a few days, he said, just to be safe. When he left, the door closed with a soft chime. She sat there longer than she meant to, unsure whether she'd just been thanked, warned, or both. Reaching for the card he'd left behind, she noticed it was folded once a single line, written in the same precise hand as before. Don't trust anyone at Rossano's. The message was almost absurd in its simplicity. She turned it over, thumb brushing the edge, half expecting it to disappear. The notice came early that morning. A line of police cars idled outside Rossano's, their lights off but presence unmistakable. Officers stepped in and out through the back entrance, talking quietly with the new manager. By the time Alara arrived, the mood was brittle. Someone whispered money laundering, another said federal audit. An officer waved her over. "You were on shift 2 nights ago. Correct room 5. Her throat tightened. "Yes." He gestured toward a booth near the bar. "We'll need a few minutes." Questions came quickly. Who poured the wine, who handled it, whether she noticed anything strange. Each time Alara said no, the officer's eyes flicked up, searching her face for cracks. She sat still, hands clasped under the table, the noise of the restaurant fading to a dull hum. Later, the manager called her in. His tone was polished, rehearsed, temporary suspension pending investigation. Not an accusation, not yet. Still, her face burned when she walked out, aware of the glances that followed. Riley caught up near the lockers. "Hey, it's not your fault. This'll blow over." Alara tried to smile. "Sure. Want company? I'll be fine." Rain started again, tracing thin lines down the glass doors. She left before anyone could stop her. The street smelled of wet stone and exhaust. By afternoon, she was at the precinct signing a statement she barely understood. The officer reminded her she could call a lawyer, though it wasn't necessary. His kindness made her stomach twist. When it ended, he returned her ID with a look that said pity disguised as procedure. Wind tugged at her coat as she stepped out. Across the street, a black car waited the same one. It should have scared her, but she was too tired to care. Kyle sat behind the wheel. He didn't speak, only nodded toward the passenger seat. Alara stood a moment on the curb water, soaking her shoes, then crossed and got in. Warm air wrapped around her. Kyle reached back for a coat and handed it over. "You're soaked." The gesture broke something steadier than tears. Her hands trembled as she took it. No one had shown her simple kindness in years. He started the car but didn't move. Rain ticked against the windshield. "Darius is gone," he said. "No trace. Someone paid for his silence." Alara stared at her hands. "And me. You saw something you shouldn't have. That makes you a liability." Her fingers tightened on the coat. "If I stay quiet, does it stop there?" He didn't answer. "I didn't do anything wrong." "I know." His voice was low, steady. Not comfort, but enough. She studied the scar along his jaw, the way his hands rested on the wheel, still deliberate. "You didn't have to come." "I was nearby." The lie was gentle. She let it stand. Neither moved. Her breathing slowed, syncing with the rhythm on the windshield. His coat hung heavy on her shoulders, smelling faintly of smoke and something clean. When he finally spoke, his voice was almost lost to the rain. "Stay away from Rossano's until things settle. I don't think they want me back." He said nothing. Minutes passed. She reached for the door. "Thank you," she murmured. Cale nodded, once eyes forward. She pulled the coat close as she crossed the street. The smell of rain and metal filled her lungs. Behind her, the car waited, or maybe it was already gone. At home, she hung the coat over a chair. The apartment was silent. The phone rang just after dusk. Alara was sorting unopened mail when it buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. She nearly ignored it, then answered anyway. "Miss Quinn," a man said, voice low even. "Do yourself a favor, stop asking about Darius Holt." She froze. "Who is this?" The line clicked, then went dead. Her first thought was Cale, but the voice had none of his calm weight, only cold impatience. She called back. No answer, just a single hollow beep. After a moment's hesitation, she phoned the detective who'd taken her statement. He listened briefly, said, "We'll make a note of it, ma'am," then hung up. The emptiness in his tone hurt more than the threat itself. She paced the apartment, checking locks corners she'd stopped noticing. The room felt smaller, air pressed close. She turned on the TV to fill the silence. By nightfall, she'd convinced herself it was a prank until the doorknob moved. A soft tremor of metal, then a click. She froze. The next sound was the thud of the downstairs door. A mug was in her hand before she thought. She opened the door. The hall looked untouched. But her apartment wasn't. Drawers gaped open, papers scattered. Nothing gone yet, everything disturbed. Her passport lay on the counter, flipped open. She sank to the floor, shaking, and called Riley. Voicemail. Tried again. Nothing. Hands trembling, she shoved clothes and documents into a tote, left the apartment, and took the stairs 2 at a time. The street glistened. She didn't look back. A cheap motel on the west side took cash without questions. The man at the desk handed her a key without looking up. Room 12 smelled of bleach and something stale. She locked the door, dropped her bag, and tried Riley again. Still no answer. Every sound in the hallway scraped at her nerves. After hours of staring at the ceiling, she stepped outside. The diner next door glowed like a lifeline. The waitress poured her coffee without asking. Alara cupped the mug, grateful for the heat. She told herself she'd leave town by morning, start over somewhere else. Then she saw him. Kyle sat in a corner booth speaking with a gray-haired man. Their voices, low gestures, sharp. She froze. He noticed, of course he did. Their eyes met briefly, acknowledgement nothing more. He turned back to the conversation. She finished her coffee, left a few bills, and slipped out. The rain had stopped, but the street still smelled damp. She walked faster. The motel sign buzzed ahead. Footsteps followed steady and unhurried. Kyle approached collar up. "You shouldn't go home. They've already been there." He nodded once. "Don't go back." She wanted to ask who they were, why any of this touched her, but the words stayed lodged in her throat. He stepped aside, letting her pass. "Be careful, Ilara." The way he said her name, soft, deliberate, tightened her chest. She nodded, kept walking. The motel's neon sign flickered red across the wet pavement. She double-locked the door, then slid down to the floor, arms wrapped around the tote. The room smelled faintly of cleaning powder and smoke. Morning came gray and uneasy. Alara packed in silence, unable to spend another night in that room. She needed to see Riley just to make sure someone she cared about was still safe. Riley lived across town above a laundromat. The door was half open when Alara arrived. She knocked once, then again louder. No answer cushions overturned a cup shattered near the sink. She called her friend's name. A faint groan answered from the bedroom. Riley sat on the floor back against the wall, a bruise spreading along her jaw. Her breathing came shallow, eyes unfocused. Who did this? Alara crouched beside her, voice trembling. Riley shook her head. 2 guys. Said they were looking for you. The words landed like a blow. Alara reached for her phone, but Riley gripped her wrist weakly. Don't call anyone. They said not to. Her hand slipped away. The fear that had followed Alara for days closed in again, heavier this time. She helped Riley onto the bed, found a damp cloth, pressed it to the bruise. "You'll be okay," she whispered, though she didn't believe it herself. "I'll come back," she said, already moving toward the door. The street blurred at the edges. Her body acted faster than her mind. One thought looping, "Get out." She took the train toward the terminal, clutching her tote tight against her chest. The city looked colder than usual, its buildings sharp against the colorless sky. At the bus station, she bought a ticket to anywhere that wasn't Chicago. Her hands shook as she passed the money over. The clerk didn't look up. A van idled across the street. 2 men stepped out, one lighting a cigarette, the other pretending to check his phone. They weren't pretending well. Alara turned toward the entrance, but one of them called her name. Ms. Quinn. Her breath caught. She ran. The pavement slick underfoot her bag, banging against her side. Someone shouted behind her, then the screech of tires tore through the sound. A black sedan swerved hard onto the sidewalk. She stumbled back as the door flew open. Cale stepped out, face unreadable, voice calm as ever. "Get in." There wasn't time to question. She climbed in. He slammed the door and circled to the driver's side. The car leapt forward, engine low but powerful. The men ran for their van. Cale's eyes stayed on the mirror hands, steady on the wheel. "Seatbelt," he said. Her pulse hammered so hard she could barely breathe. Rain began again, sudden and heavy, smearing the city into streaks of gray. Alara clutched the seatbelt across her chest, every muscle taut. The car veered down a narrow underpass, then out toward the expressway. When he finally slowed, they were miles from the terminal. Buildings gave way to trees and open air. Kyle parked under a bridge, cut the engine. He exhaled once slow. I told you not to trust anyone from Rossano's. Alara turned to him, voice shaking. You knew this would happen. I knew they'd try something. You could have warned me. I just did, he said quietly. The words stung, though not for their sharpness. She looked away, hands gripping her knees to stop them from trembling. Cale rested his arms on the steering wheel. They won't stop until they're sure you're out of reach. Marcus doesn't like loose ends. Who's Marcus? He hesitated. The man who paid Darius. The name meant nothing yet, but it chilled her all the same. For a long while, neither spoke. The rain softened to a faint patter. Cale glanced toward her, his expression gentler now, though his posture stayed guarded. You hurt. She shook her head. Riley is. He didn't ask more. Instead, he reached into the back seat, pulled a small bottle of water, handed it to her. Drink. Her fingers brushed him briefly. Warm skin, steady grip. The smallest touch, but it broke through the layer of panic still clinging to her. She sipped throat dry. The tremor in her hands eased. When Cale finally started the car again, the wipers brushed away the last of the rain. He drove toward the riverbank and stopped near a patch of open ground. The fear in her chest loosened little by little until what replaced it wasn't calm exactly, but something warmer, something she hadn't let herself feel in a long time. Cale didn't drive far. The roads narrowed, lined with quiet trees and old warehouses. They turned onto a dirt lane ending at a small house near the river, peeling paint, uneven porch stillness, like protection. Luca stepped out before the car stopped. She's with you then? No surprise. Cale nodded, carried her bag in. The house smelled of dust and old coffee. 2 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen, a back door opening to the riverbank. Cale told her to rest, then went with Luca to another room. Their voices sank behind the door. Morning came clear. Alara woke early and made coffee something to keep her hands busy. Luca joined later, yawning, and thanked her as if she'd done him a favor. Days slipped by without shape. Cale left at dawn, returned late, phone in hand. She learned to read the pauses in his tone, the kind heavy with worry, the kind measured for strategy. Sometimes he'd hang up and stand by the window, motionless. Luca kept busy. Cale doesn't trust many people enough to hide them here, he said, half joking. Take it as a compliment. She smiled faintly. By afternoon, she was often on the porch, watering the small plants along the railing. The river smell mixed with damp wood. Quiet settled over her breath. She hadn't realized she'd been holding. Cale joined her once standing close enough for her to notice the faint tiredness in his face. They won't find you here, he said. That's not what I'm afraid of. She murmured, though she didn't explain. He gave a small nod and walked back. One day, Cale came home earlier than usual. Luca was out buying supplies, and the house felt unusually still. Alara cooked something simple pasta garlic, the last of the tomatoes Luca had brought. Cale sat at the table, phone face down beside him. You don't have to cook, he said. I needed to do something, she replied. They ate without hurry. The river caught the fading light. After a while, she asked, Do you ever regret living this way? Cale looked up from his plate. The question seemed to catch him off guard. Regret. Yes. The danger. The secrecy. He leaned back, thinking. I've never thought I had the right to regret. The honesty in his tone left her unsure how to respond. She gathered their plates quietly, rinsing them under the tap. Behind her, his chair scraped softly as he stood. I don't expect you to understand, he said. I don't, she admitted, but I think I wish you could. He said nothing after that. The kitchen filled with the sound of running water and distant crickets. The glow of the cigarette flared, faded, flared again. Each spark lit his face in fragments, tired, thoughtful, distant. She rested her hand on the windowsill, watching without meaning to. The night settled heavier around them. Kyle left before sunrise. His voice had been steady when he told her he needed to return to the city. Nothing in his tone invited argument. Luca will stay here. You'll be safe, he said, and that was all. Ilara watched his car disappear down the dirt road. The house felt different after that same walls, same river, but a stillness that pressed on her chest. Luca tried to distract her with small talk, half-hearted jokes about Cale's temper and the coffee running out. It helped for an hour, maybe two. She couldn't focus on anything. Every buzz of the phone made her jump. When she finally dozed off, it was to the sound of the river dragging against its banks. She woke in the dark to the glow of the television. Luca had left the news on low volume. The words "explosion at the pier" crawled across the screen. She froze. The image showed smoke rising above the harbor, red lights flashing, something burning. The reporter called it an incident linked to organized crime. No names, no confirmation. Ilara's hands shook as she tried Cale's number. No answer. She called again until the phone died. Luca appeared in the doorway, pale. "Don't jump to conclusions," he said, though. Fear edged his eyes. She couldn't stay. Something in her refused stillness. She packed a few things, ignored. Luca's protest, took his spare keys. "I'll be back," she said, and left. The drive blurred into gray streets rinsed by rain. She parked near her old building, climbed fast, pushed the door open. It swung too easily. The apartment was wrecked again. Drawers overturned, couch slashed. This time it felt deliberate. They wanted her to see it. She moved room to room, breath tight, half expecting someone waiting. Nothing. Just the stale damp and her own pulse. In the bedroom, a photo lay face down. She turned it over herself years ago at a fair sunlight across her face. Across it, 3 words in black ink. "You should stay quiet." The marker had bled through, slicing her image. Her knees hit the floor. The photo trembled in her hands. Cale's coat, Riley's bruises, Darius's silence. It all folded into one truth. She was in too deep to walk away. A sound from the street snapped her alert. 2 men stood by a car, one on the phone, the other scanning the windows. She ducked under the blinds. Her body moved before thought. The photo in her pocket bag over her shoulder, she slipped down the back stairwell. The front door opened below. She ran. Shoes splashed through puddles, breath harsh in her throat. When she stopped, her reflection shook in a puddle, hair tangled, eyes wide, face unfamiliar. Across town, Marcus Vale poured a drink, smoke curling above him. "He's finished," he said to the man beside him. "This city only has room for one kind of order, and it isn't his. And the girl collateral." Marcus raised his glass. Ilara kept walking, unsure where to go. The photo in her pocket felt heavier with each step, ink staining her fingers. Streetlights flickered as Ilara crossed the block. She'd been walking for an hour, clothes, heavy, nerves frayed. Every sound, the hiss of tires, a shuffle of steps, felt too close. A car engine hummed behind her, slow at first, then louder. Headlights flared. The car swerved, forcing her to the sidewalk. She stumbled, dropped her bag, and ran. Tires screamed. Someone shouted her name. She darted into an alley, shoes slipping on wet concrete. Walls pressed close, dumpsters and dripping pipes on either side. A shadow moved ahead, cutting off escape. Heart pounding, she turned to run back, then froze at the voice that came from behind. Ilara. Kyle stepped from the darkness, rain clinging to his hair coat, half unbuttoned. His eyes flicked past her toward the street, sharp, alert. She barely managed to speak. "There, I know." 2 men appeared at the mouth of the alley, silhouettes against the streetlight. Kyle pushed her back gently. "Stay behind me." The first man stepped forward, metal glinting in his hand. Kyle's body tightened, not in threat, but readiness. The strike came fast. The sound that followed was brief and brutal. A scuffle, a grunt, a dull crack. Ilara pressed to the wall, breath shallow, the alley thick with rust and rain. Kyle staggered, once caught himself, then drove the attacker back with sharp precision. The second man cursed, retreated, and fled toward the car. Engines roared, then faded. Kyle turned to her. "You hurt." She shook her head, then saw the dark stain spreading across his shoulder. "Your arm." "It's nothing," he said, but his breath hitched. Before she could argue, he caught her wrist and pulled her toward the side street. They ran in silence, her shoes slapping through puddles, his stride uneven but sure. The city streamed by in wet neon streaks. He didn't stop until they reached a garage near the river. The door gave way with a shove. Cale dropped onto an overturned crate, hand pressed to the wound. "They followed you from your place," he said. Alara knelt beside him. "You shouldn't have come. Leaving you there wasn't an option." She tore a strip from her sleeve. "Hold still." He watched her work, face drawn. Blood streaked his shirt. Her hands shook as she pressed the fabric to it. "You're bleeding too much. It's not deep." His voice rasped. Rain tapped. A dim bulb swung above them. "I shouldn't have gone back," she said quietly. "It's my fault they found me." Cale looked up. "No one deserves to be hunted for doing the right thing. You believe that I have to. Otherwise, none of this means anything." Something in his tone, soft, almost weary, cut deeper than the words. She tied the cloth tight. His arm brushed hers. Their eyes met, steady and tired, holding what neither could name. Thunder rolled far off. Alara exhaled, still trembling, but not from fear. He had stepped between her and danger without hesitation. Kyle leaned back against the wall. "They won't stop now, I know." Neither moved. Oil and smoke clung to the damp air. She rinsed her hands with water from his bottle, the runoff pink, before dripping to the floor. His breathing slowed. His gaze lingered on her long enough for her to feel it. She looked away, unsure what to do with that silence. He winced, shifted. She reached out, steadying his arm. Their shoulders touched warmth, bleeding through the chill. The tremor in her chest eased. They sat side by side, facing the open doorway where headlights brushed the floor. Cale's eyes slipped shut, exhaustion softening his face. Alara studied the bandage, already dark again, but said nothing. The garage hummed with the rhythm of their breathing. Iron and damp wood clung to the walls. Cale dozed off under his coat, the bandage still dark. Alara sat a few feet away, knees drawn close. At dawn, she said softly, "I used to work in a logistics firm. Nothing exciting." Cale stirred but didn't interrupt. "They accused me of leaking internal documents," she went on. "Said I'd sold them to a competitor. I hadn't. But it didn't matter. My boss called it an unfortunate misunderstanding. I lost everything in a week. The worst part wasn't losing the job. It was realizing how fast people disappear when you stop being useful." Her voice thinned. "The man I was seeing back then, he sided with them. Said he couldn't risk his reputation. That was the last time I tried to explain myself to anyone." Cale's head tilted toward her, his expression unreadable. She waited for judgment, but none came. "I've kept my head down since," she said. "Just wanted to work, pay rent, live small. But trouble has a way of finding me anyway." Cale's hand shifted slightly, fingers brushing the floor beside him. "Sometimes we don't invite it," he said. "It just knows our name." That made her look up. The lines of fatigue on his face seemed deeper now. There was something hollow in his eyes, but it wasn't emptiness. It was memory. She hesitated, then asked, "What about you? Do you ever get tired of this? Of running things no one should have to?" He didn't answer at first, then. Tired, yes, but fear's the harder part. Fear of what he met her gaze, trusting someone, and watching them die because of it. The words were almost a whisper, but they landed heavy. Cale leaned back, letting his head rest against the cold brick. His breath came slower, now steadier, though pain shadowed it. "You should try to sleep," he said. "I can't. Neither can I." He reached toward her, not to comfort, but to confirm. His fingers brushed her wrist, light grounding. The pulse under her skin jumped, once then settled. She didn't pull away. They stayed like that, his hand resting against her wrist, her breathing shallow but calmer. Time blurred. The light changed from gray to gold, spilling weakly through the cracks. Cale stirred, straightened his coat, winced at the movement of his shoulder. Alara found the courage to break the quiet. "You think this will end soon? I'll make sure it does," he said, fastening the buttons with slow precision. "Marcus has crossed a line he shouldn't have. I'll finish it in a few days." She shook her head. "You can't do it alone. I have to." Then let me come with you." Kyle looked at her for a long moment as if deciding whether to argue or explain. "You've already been hurt enough. So have you." The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile. "I'm used to it." That ended the conversation. He pushed himself up, rolling his shoulder to test the bandage. The color had returned to his face, but it didn't disguise the fatigue. Alara watched him gather his things. Gloves, keys, the small pistol she hadn't noticed before. The calm in his movements frightened her more than the weapon. It was the calm of someone who had already accepted the cost. He paused at the door. "Stay here until you hear from me," he said. "Luca will check in." Her voice dropped. "And if you don't come back, I will." He stepped into the morning light before she could find another question. The door creaked shut behind him, leaving only the faint echo of his footsteps. Alara sat where she was staring at the empty space he'd left. The light through the doorway caught the dust in slow spirals, turning the air gold for a heartbeat before it settled again. Luca brought the news 3 days after Cale's departure. He entered the garage looking worn, rain still clinging to his jacket. "Marcus is talking," he said, dropping a folded newspaper on the table. "He's telling people you tipped off the police, says you wanted Cale gone." Alara froze mid-step. The words didn't make sense at first. "I know it's not true," Luca cut in. "But others don't. The network's turning. They think you're the reason for the explosion at the pier. The paper showed nothing of it, only a short article about the ongoing gang conflict." Still, her hands tightened around its edge. "So what happens now?" she asked. Luca sighed. "You stay hidden. Once Cale clears this mess, he'll fix it." "I can't hide again," she said quietly. He gave her a look, half disbelief, half pity. "You don't understand what Marcus can do." "Maybe not," she said, "but I understand what happens when you let people like him decide who you are." Luca didn't argue. He poured himself a drink instead, muttering something about stubbornness being contagious. She couldn't sleep. She thought about Kyle's voice, that steady tone he used when promising things would end soon. Maybe he believed it. Maybe he was wrong. By morning, the decision was already forming. Fear had been a companion for too long. It had lived with her, eaten beside her, dictated every choice she made. There was no life left in it. Luca found her packing a small bag. "You're leaving," he said flatly. "I'm finding proof," she answered. "Someone has to show what Marcus is doing." He rubbed his temples. "Alara, don't make this about redemption. You'll get yourself killed." "I'm not trying to be a hero," she said. "I just want the truth to mean something again." The argument went nowhere. In the end, he pressed a small flash drive into her hand. An address. Used to be one of Marcus's people. She ran the accounts before he cut her loose. "Don't mention my name." The address led her to a half-forgotten corner of the South District rows of boarded-up shops, a neon sign flickering over a bar that still refused to die. Inside smelled of stale beer and bleach. The woman she needed sat at the far end of the counter, hair dyed in impossible red fingers stained with ink. She didn't look surprised when Alara approached. "You're either brave or desperate," the woman said. "Both get people killed around here." "I just need information," Alara replied. "Marcus Vale, Rossano's, anything that connects the two." The woman studied her, tapping her cigarette against the counter. "I don't owe Kyle Moriyama's people favors. I'm not one of his people." "Then why risk this?" Alara hesitated, then said, "Because I'm tired of being the one who survives by silence." Something in that answer made the woman pause. After a moment, she reached into her purse, pulled out a folded envelope, and slid it across. "You didn't get this from me." Alara opened it. A photocopy of a contract shipping manifests bank transfers signatures. Marcus's name appeared beside Rossano's as a shell corporation. "This is enough to make someone listen," Alara said, voice shaking. The woman smiled without warmth. "It's enough to make someone kill you faster. Choose carefully who you give it to." Alara folded the papers, slipped them into her coat. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't come back." the streets slick with drizzle. She walked fast, head down, heart hammering. The contract felt heavy against her ribs. A shadow passed across the opposite wall. The gleam of headlights appeared at the far end of the street, creeping closer. Her first instinct was to turn away, but something in her refused. For weeks she'd been running from fear, from the past, from herself. Now, standing in the damp glow of the streetlight, she understood there was nowhere left to run that wouldn't bring her back to this same choice. The car slowed, idling at the curb. Alara's breath caught the envelope tight in her grip. Maybe it was Cale. Maybe it wasn't. Her pulse thudded in her ears. Then the light changed and the car rolled on, slowly vanishing around the corner. Alara exhaled, almost laughing from the release. The sound came out thin, brittle. The van smelled of gasoline and cold metal. Alara's wrists burned where the ties cut into her skin. The two men in front didn't speak. Their silence was worse than any threat. When the van stopped, one of them yanked the door open. They dragged her out and led her through a rusted gate into a wide, empty building. The lights were dim and flickering. A single desk stood near the center, surrounded by crates that had long since gathered dust. Marcus Vale leaned against the desk sleeves, rolled up expression easy. "Miss Quinn," he greeted, his voice smooth, almost cordial. "I'm disappointed. I thought you'd left town." Alara straightened her back, though her knees wanted to give. "Guess you were wrong." Marcus chuckled softly. "You know, Cale once told me you were smart. But coming back here, that's not smart. It's suicidal." He took a few steps closer, circling her as though inspecting a purchase. "You have something that belongs to me. Contracts, I believe, the ones you shouldn't have found." Her pulse thudded in her throat. "You mean the proof? Proof is a matter of who's still alive to show it." He gestured. One of his men handed him her bag. Marcus pulled out the envelope, tore it open, skimmed the papers with a faint smile. "You really thought this would change something?" Alara forced her voice steady. "People deserve to know what you've done." He laughed, not cruelly, just amused. "You think the world cares. Everyone's paid to look the other way. You were convenient once a waitress, nobody noticed. But now you're a liability." Her stomach twisted, but she met his gaze. "You're afraid of Coyle." That earned a pause. Marcus's smile thinned. "Coyle's finished. You'll see that soon." He nodded to the guards. "Take her." Then almost casually, "You think he'll come for you. Coyle doesn't save people. He uses them. When they break, he walks away." The words hit like a slap, but the doubt didn't last. She remembered his blood on her hands, his voice saying, "No one deserved to be hunted." "You're wrong," she said. "You build power through fear. He builds his through honor. That's why you'll lose." Marcus's mouth tightened. "Honor." His laugh was short, bitter. "Honor doesn't win wars." He turned. "Kill her when I'm gone. Make it clean." A guard moved for his weapon. Then the screech of tires split the air. Marcus frozen. A door slammed. Steps echoed slow and sure. Cale's voice cut through the space. "You've gotten sloppy, Marcus." Marcus turned. "You should have stayed buried." Cale walked closer, coat-dripping rain. "You tried to bury me with your secrets. The thing about secrets, they don't stay loyal." Marcus gestured toward Alara. "She gave you the papers. Cale ignored it. Your accounts, your transfers, every thread leads back to you. By morning, everyone tied to you will know who sold them out." Marcus's calm cracked. "You don't have the reach." Cale tilted his head. "Don't I" engines rumbled outside, multiple cars' doors slamming in sequence. Not reinforcements, men leaving. Marcus's guards glanced at one another. "They've already chosen," Cale said. "No one's dying for you tonight." Marcus's charm drained away. "You always were good at turning people. I just give them a choice." The silence stretched thin. Marcus dropped the papers. They scattered like falling ash. "You think this is over? It's already over." Cale's tone was flat. He nodded toward Alara. "Go." She hesitated. Marcus stood still, his jaw tight. One guard lowered his gun, stepped back. Alara's pulse thudded as her shoes echoed across the floor. Marcus spoke again, cold and even. "Walk away, Kyle. You know how this ends. Men like me always survive." Kyle didn't answer. At the doorway, she turned once more. Marcus stood amid the fallen paper's eyes locked on hers, hatred and something like recognition flickering together. Kyle motioned forward. She stepped into the rain. The warehouse door slammed behind them with a hollow boom. Cale's shoulder brushed hers as they reached the car. The road stretched ahead, slick and endless. Neither spoke. The safe house held a stillness that followed violence. Alara entered first. Luca lay on the couch, shirt torn a deep cut along his side. He was waiting at the dock when they hit. Cale said quietly, "Marcus's men must have doubled back." Luca groaned, managing a crooked grin when he saw Alara. "Guess I didn't duck fast enough." She knelt beside him, pressing a clean cloth to the wound. "You need a hospital," Can't Luca muttered. "Too many eyes. I'll live." Cale handed her a bottle of antiseptic. The contact jolted her not from warmth, but from how cold his fingers were. He'd been like that since they left the warehouse, silent, composed, but withdrawn in a way she hadn't seen before. When Luca drifted into uneasy sleep, Alara turned to Cale. "He's bleeding because of you." Cale didn't argue. "Because of Marcus," he corrected softly. She wanted to believe that, but the thought wouldn't settle. The memory of Marcus's last words, "You used to be just like me," echoed in her head. She hadn't understood it then. Now, in the faint light of the kitchen, she saw something in Kyle's face that made her stomach twist, guilt old and familiar. "What did he mean?" she asked. Kyle's jaw tightened. "It doesn't matter. It does," she said, stepping closer. "He said you were the same, that you used to work together." Cale's silence was answer enough. "Tell me he's lying." Cale stared at the floor before speaking. "Years ago, I signed off on a shipment Marcus ran. I didn't ask what it was. When it went bad, people died, families. He made a fortune. I took the fall and started over." Alara's throat tightened. "You knew what kind of man he was. I thought I could control him. That's arrogance. It convinces you control makes you clean." She shook her head. "You said you were fixing this. I am. By destroying him the same way you helped build him." The question landed hard. Kyle's eyes flickered, but he didn't flinch. "I can't undo it," he said. "I can only make sure it ends with me. That wasn't enough." The fragile trust between them splintered. "You're not saving anyone," she whispered. "You're just rewriting guilt." He said nothing. The quiet pressed against her chest until even breathing hurt. Luca stirred on the couch, muttering. Kyle pulled a chair close, elbows on his knees, head bowed in ordinary motion that felt like defeat. Alara waited for something to change, a reason to stay. None came. "I can't do this," she said. Cale looked up, voice low. "I won't stop you." That should have freed her. It didn't. She grabbed her coat hands, shaking. The room seemed to shrink. Kyle stayed still, his silence the closest thing to apology he could offer. At the door, he spoke. "I never meant to pull you into my past." "You didn't," she said. "I walked in because I thought you were different. I wanted to be." That broke what was left. She walked fast away from him, from Marcus, from everything between them. Luca sat on the floor of the safe house, shoulder wrapped in old bandages, a revolver on the table beside a pile of cigarette butts. "You shouldn't be here," he muttered. "I heard Marcus is still moving shipments. You knew he exhaled smoke through his teeth." Kyle wanted to end it quietly. But Marcus isn't just selling, now he's burning everything, paying people to hunt Cale. It's open season. From his jacket pocket, Luca pulled a small recorder. "This is what he didn't want you to hear." She pressed play. Static first, then Marcus's voice smooth as oil. "Kyle Moriyama dies before sunrise. No witnesses, no body. The city forgets him." Alara's fingers tightened. Every instinct told her to run again, yet something stronger rooted her. Kyle hadn't been fighting for redemption. He'd been trying to stop a war that would bury everyone he'd ever known. Luca studied her face. "You're not thinking straight." "I am," she said. "I know where this ends." He almost smiled. "Then you're both crazy." When she left, dawn had barely begun to thin the sky. She found Kyle through a number she'd memorized and never used. He answered after a long pause, voice rough. "Ilara, I have something you need to hear." A silence stretched before he said, "Where Rossano's?" "The warehouse." The same place where it had all started, where she'd told him not to drink the poisoned wine. By the time she reached it, clouds hung low and heavy. Kyle was already there, leaning against a pillar. He looked tired, older, but the tension that once wrapped around him had loosened, replaced by quiet resolve. She handed him the recorder. He listened without interrupting the faintest shift in his expression when Marcus's voice came through. When it ended, he said, "So it's true." "You already knew," she said softly. "I needed to hear him say it." They stood in silence, the sound of dripping water echoing through the rafters. "What now?" she asked. Cale turned the recorder in his hand. "Marcus thinks he still controls the narrative. We give it to the people who can't be bought, the feds, the press. Once this is public, no one can protect him." Ilara nodded. "Then let's finish it." He looked at her, a faint hesitation in his eyes. "You trust me after everything I don't need to," she said. "I just know what side I'm on." That made him almost smile. "Then we move." They worked with the precision of people who had run out of time. Ilara slipped into Marcus's meeting under the guise of negotiation, the recorder hidden in her coat pocket, while Cale traced the comms feeding out of the building, rerouting the signals toward federal surveillance. The plan was simple, expose Marcus, while he thought he was closing his last deal. Marcus spoke easily with his lieutenants, unaware of the open channel transmitting every word. Ilara waited near the door, playing her part. Quiet, harmless, invisible. Her heart kept a slow, deliberate rhythm. When Marcus glanced her way, she felt that familiar chill. "You again," he said. "Did Cale send you to die with him?" "No," she replied. "I came to watch you lose." He laughed, but the sound barely left his throat before Cale's voice echoed from below. "Marcus Vale, you're done." The metal door burst open. Cale stepped through with the same cold calm he'd worn since the beginning, followed by men in black vests, federal insignias glinting under the lights. Chaos rippled. Marcus's guards hesitated, caught between loyalty and survival. Ilara ducked as one man tried to flee. Cale's hand shot out, steadying her before she hit the wall. "Stay close," he said, and for once she didn't resist. They moved as one through the confusion, covering each other's blind spots with instinctive rhythm. Every motion felt inevitable, as if rehearsed in another life. Marcus tried to escape through the loading bay, but the agents closed in. He went down hard wrists, bound his fury, breaking against the concrete. "You think this changes anything?" he shouted. "The system still eats men like you." Kyle didn't answer. The agents read him his rights while flashlights cut through the dark. When it ended, Kyle turned. Across the noise and flashing lights, Ilara met his gaze. Neither spoke. A small nod passed between them, enough to carry trust, forgiveness, and the quiet knowledge they had reached the same end by different roads. Marcus was led away. Ilara's breath evened. Kyle switched off the recorder and handed it to her. "Keep it. Proof you were never just a witness." She held it carefully, feeling its weight. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and old coffee. Ilara paused at the desk until a nurse pointed toward the west wing. The corridor stretched quiet and pale, her steps echoing softly. Luca's room was the last on the left. Through the glass, he sat propped against a stack of pillows, bruised but grinning. Machines hummed around him, steady as breath. Cale waited in the hall, one arm in a sling. His shirt hung loose, dried blood marking the collar, but his stance was calm. He saw her and straightened, though not by much. "He'll live," he said. I figured, she answered. "He's too stubborn not to." A brief silence hovered. Voices murmured down the hall, but between them everything felt suspended. Cale's gaze. "They're tearing everything apart." The feds froze most accounts by noon. My name's in half their files. You'll get out of it. He shook his head once. I won't try. Luca can handle what's left. He'll keep the pieces that still mean something. Ilara studied him. And you, I'm finished. He said it quietly, not bitter, more like a statement of weight set down. No more crews, no debts, no one to command. For the first time since she'd met him, Cale didn't look like someone calculating his next move. His shoulders seemed lighter, but the emptiness behind his calm unsettled her. You could leave, she said. Start over somewhere no one knows your name. I could, he murmured, but places don't erase what you carry. A nurse brushed past, adjusting Luca's IV through the open door. Ilara stepped aside. The movement brought her shoulder close to Cale's. She could feel the warmth radiating through the fabric of his sleeve, the faint tremor in his arm as he tried not to move it too much. Neither spoke for a while. The quiet wasn't awkward, only full of things they didn't need to say anymore. Cale broke it first. I didn't think we'd make it. Ilara's lips curved slightly. Neither did I. He gave a short, soft laugh that faded almost immediately. You ever think about what happens now I'm trying not to, she said. I just want to breathe for a bit. He nodded like he understood that better than anyone. You were right about me, he said after a pause, about what I was doing, rewriting guilt. I thought if I took Marcus down, I'd balance the scale. She looked at him, the tired lines at the edges of his mouth, the faint roughness in his voice. Maybe you did, she said, or maybe you just stopped adding to it. That drew a small, genuine smile from him, quick, almost fragile. You sound like Luca, he said. I'll take that as a compliment. Luca stirred behind the glass, trying to wave with the arm that wasn't bandaged. For a moment, they all just watched him, an ordinary gesture, small, human, and enough. Ilara leaned against the opposite wall. So you're letting him take over, he deserves a chance to make it right, Cale said. Maybe he'll do better than I did. You'll still watch his back. From a distance, he replied, It's safer that way. The words hung between them, quiet but heavy. When Ilara turned toward him again, his eyes were on her, studying her, like he was memorizing something before letting it go. You'll be fine, he said. She almost laughed. You sound sure. You've already survived worse. He pushed off the wall, slowly wincing as he adjusted his shoulder, started walking. Not fast, not slow, just certain. Through the glass, Luca shifted again, mumbling something that looked like a curse and a prayer tangled together. Ilara smiled faintly, turning back to watch Cale's figure disappear down the hall. The last hearing ended in a narrow gray room with paper cups of cold coffee. Ilara signed her final statement, thanked the agent who'd stopped meeting her eyes days ago, and stepped into a city she no longer recognized. Chicago's noise pressed close, but couldn't reach her. Coyle had disappeared a week after Marcus's arrest. No word, no trail, just a gap, where his name used to linger in reports and whispers. Luca only said, he's alive. That's enough. She left soon after. The train north dragged. When she stepped off near Lake Michigan, her first job came by chance, a cafe on Main Street. Pale yellow walls, a handwritten, help wanted sign. She washed cups, swept floors, learned the rhythm of a place that closed before dark. No one asked why she sometimes drifted mid-task while the espresso hissed behind her. One morning she found an envelope in her mailbox, no stamp, no return address. Inside lay a folded slip of paper yellowed at the edges. Her own hurried handwriting, "Don't drink." Her breath caught. Once a warning meant to save a stranger, now a fragment returned to her across distance and time. She pressed it between her palms, smiling through blurred eyes. It wasn't proof, but it was enough. That night, the lake shimmered under half-light calm, but never still. Sometimes fog rolled in, and she caught herself watching as if someone might emerge, tall, quiet, familiar. She told no one about the note. Some things belonged to the kind of silence that healed instead of haunted. Weeks passed. Spring softened the town's edges. Tourists filled the cafe asking for directions to the pier. Alara worked, rested, wrote small fragments again. Not confessions, just thoughts about what it meant to stay. She learned neighbors' names, fixed a leaking pipe, laughed when a stray dog stole her sandwich. The sound startled her. It had been so long since laughter felt natural. By June, fear no longer held her. Still at dusk, the horizon would turn silver, and she'd pause mid-step, eyes drawn to the water, not longing, only quiet recognition. One evening, while wiping tables, her phone buzzed. Unknown number, 3 words, I'm safe. Don't worry. She didn't reply. The message stayed open screen, glowing faintly. She stood still, heartbeat even. Streetlight brushed her face, soft, forgiving. She breathed deep and realized she wasn't waiting anymore. A gull called somewhere over the lake. Alara smiled, set the phone down, turned the cafe sign from open to closed. The kettle began to whistle. She went to pour herself a cup. Mornings began with tending to the plants on her windowsill, basil ivy, a small orange tree yet to bear fruit. 2 sketches hung on the wall hands, reaching for each other, but never quite touching. The quiet no longer unsettled her. The knock came on a Sunday. When she opened the door, Riley stood there sunburned and smiling, a bag of food in her arms that smelled faintly of garlic and herbs. You moved without telling me, Riley said, stepping inside before Alara could answer. That's rude. Alara laughed. You found me anyway. I always do. Riley set the bag on the counter. You've been hiding. I can tell. I've been resting. Resting looks a lot like avoiding, just so you know. Alara shook her head, smiling despite herself. You sound like a therapist. Maybe I missed my calling. Riley pulled out 2 containers of pasta. I opened the restaurant last month, a small place near the station. You'd like it messy tables, loud regulars, bad music. That sounds perfect. It is. Riley said, then tilted her head, studying Alara. But you're still too quiet. Don't stay locked in this neat little life forever, okay? The world won't wait. Alara poured them both glasses of water. I don't need it to wait. I just need to keep up. They ate at the small table. Conversation drifted easily from work to old coworkers, from recipes to how the news always found ways to repeat itself. At one point, Riley set her fork down. Do you still believe people change? Alara thought about it. I believe I did, she said. That made Riley grin. That's a start. They spent the afternoon walking along the promenade. Riley talked about expanding the restaurant, joked about needing a partner who could keep her from burning out. Alara promised to visit next week. When they said goodbye, Riley hugged her tight. You look lighter, she said. I feel it. Later, when Alara returned home, she checked her phone out of habit, one new message. The city's quiet. I'll be leaving soon. No name, but she didn't need one. Her thumb hovered above the screen. She could type something. Be safe. Thank you, don't disappear. None of them felt right. She locked the phone and placed it face down on the counter. The cafe was almost empty, chairs turned upside down on tables, the smell of roasted beans still hanging. Alara wiped the counter slowly, thinking about nothing in particular, when the bell above the door rang. She didn't look up right away. We're closed, she said out of habit. I figured a voice answered, low, steady, familiar. Her hand froze. Then she looked. Cale stood near the door, dressed in a plain jacket and worn boots hair slightly longer than before. No entourage, no shadow behind him. Just him carrying the same calm that used to frighten her, once now tempered into something gentler. For a long moment, neither spoke. I was passing through, he said finally. Thought I'd stop for a cup of coffee. Her chest tightened around the simplest of words. She nodded toward the stool by the counter. Sit then. It's not much, but the machine still works. He smiled faintly. I never doubted it. The sound of the grinder filled the silence between them, rhythmic grounding. She poured water, watched the steam curl up like breath in cold air. When she slid the cup across the counter, he took it carefully, fingers brushing the ceramic as if it might break. He sipped, nodded once. Still strong. You used to hate it that way. I got used to it. She leaned back against the sink, arms crossed. They talked about the town, the lake, the slow mornings, the tourists that came and went. Kyle asked if the place ever froze over in winter. Alara said it did, though, never completely. You seem different, he said. So do you. He looked down at the cup, turning it in his hands. I've been trying to live small. It's harder than I thought. Small isn't bad, she said. It means you can see things clearly. He gave a small laugh. Luca's still running things. He started a fund rehabilitation job placement. I gave him most of what I had left. Alara tilted her head. That's a big change. I don't miss it, he admitted. For the first time, I don't feel like I'm standing on a pile of debts. She studied him for a moment. Doesn't it feel empty? He shook his head. It feels light. The quiet after that was comfortable, the kind that settled into the corners of a room instead of pressing against it. Alara smiled without thinking. You still owe me, you know. For what? For the warning, she said softly, and the trouble that came after. Cale met her eyes. Something in his expression shifted, an old ache replaced by something quieter. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the faint trace of rain on his coat. Then I should repay it properly. The wedding wasn't planned. One morning, months after Cale's return, Alara mentioned the town hall held small ceremonies on Fridays. Kyle looked up from his coffee and said, Then let's go this Friday. She laughed, thinking it a joke. It wasn't. They kept it simple. No guests, no aisle, no fuss. Riley brought a bouquet from a roadside stall, half wildflowers, half eucalyptus, that smelled like calm. Luca showed up late, still limping, wearing a suit too tight in the shoulders and a grin too wide to hide. The hall was bright in a plain, honest way, sunlight bouncing off tiled floors. A clerk with tired eyes stood ready behind a desk stacked with forms. Alara's dress was cotton cream-colored, tied at the waist with a thin ribbon. She'd sewn it herself. Cale wore a borrowed jacket from Luca, sleeves an inch short. None of it mattered. When the clerk asked if they wanted to exchange vows, Alara hesitated. She'd never liked promises made for an audience. Cale must have known. We'll keep it short, he said. He took her hand. You once told me people could change. I didn't believe you. Now I do. Her lips curved. You said you didn't know how to live small. But you're learning. The clerk cleared her throat, smiled despite herself, and declared them married, in a voice that almost sounded kind. Riley clapped bright and unrestrained. Luca raised his fist. Finally, after the papers were signed, they stepped into the street. The sky hung low with spring haze. Riley made them pose, Cale squinting, Alara laughing mid-blink. The picture wasn't perfect, which made it right. They celebrated at Riley's restaurant, 4 tables pushed together, candle wax dripping down to the plates. Luca toasted them with cheap wine. To start over, he said, without losing the good parts. Cale didn't speak much. His arm rested around Alara's chair as Riley argued with the cook about dessert. Every so often he looked her way, the faintest smile at the edge of disbelief, like someone who'd stumbled into peace and hadn't yet decided whether to trust it. When the others had gone and the candles burned low, they walked home along the river. The water drifted lazily, holding pieces of moonlight between ripples. Kyle slipped his hand into hers. She didn't pull away. No guards, no plans, he said quietly. Feels strange. You'll get used to it. He smiled. Maybe. At home, she kicked off her shoes by the door and hung the small bouquet on a hook. The petals were already starting to wilt, but the scent lingered faintly. Kyle poured them both tea the way he'd learned from her strong, no sugar. They sat on the floor cups between them. The clock ticked steady and soft. This doesn't feel like an ending. Alara said, It's not, he replied. Just a different kind of beginning. Cale reached for her hand again, thumb brushing the faint line of her pulse. You know he said I never thanked you properly. You just did. They stayed like that for a while, quiet content. When the clock struck 11, Alara stood, gathered their cups, and placed them in the sink. Cale watched her move around the room, her gestures unhurried, her presence grounding. For now, they stayed still, two lives that had finally settled into one gentle beat. The world beyond their walls could wait. In the end, it wasn't victory that saved them, it was choice. Alara and Cale learned that redemption doesn't come wrapped in grand gestures, but in the quiet courage to keep living, to keep loving even after the world has broken you. The past never truly disappears. It softens, becomes part of the rhythm you carry forward. May you, too, find a way to forgive your story and choose to love again, not because it's safe, but because it's real.